So, you may have heard that over the weekend. Well, let's put it this way. I was only just really first hearing about all this out from New York and the potential of a new mayor for the city of New York. Frankly, a mayor that they deserve. I suppose we all, in the way, get the politicians we vote for and we deserve. And if you keep voting for the ones that will screw you over and betray you, then you're going to get screwed over and betrayed. However, if you are a woke hellhole like New York, then don't be surprised when eventually you end up with a mayor who is in every way an avatar of the politics of that city, right? So before I move on with all of that, though, I just want to tell you that we have a new show for the Lotus Eaters, which is Firas Modad's Realpolitik. I can tell you that this is a really, really good news series where Firas explores all of the geopolitical stories and situations of the day. If you scroll down on this, you'll see nothing but praise from people who have watched it so far. So if you're interested in geopolitics, you can sign up for £5 a month, less than a pint in this day and age, a pint a month, and you can go and watch his show. So I'll start here. No, I won't, because apparently that's...
There you go. Now you can do it.
All right. Aha, oh, I see. Right, okay, still learning. So, the man is Zoran, let me not use for these foreign names. It's, Zoran Kwame Mamdani, traditional white Anglo-Saxon Protestant name, obviously from traditional America.
He's clearly a wasp.
He is a wasp.
Definitely a wasp.
New Englander through and through.
Massachusetts, man. Yeah. And but the interesting thing about Zoran is that there were a lot of people online, and I'll get to it later, saying, because he's a Muslim. He's an Islamist. Honestly, he doesn't seem to be, right? It's not the Islam side of him that's actually as worrying in this particular state. It's more the fact that every single factor of his pedigree seems to be defined by communism, right? It's to do with the fact that his father gave him the middle name Kwame, named after the first president of Ghana.
Yep.
Is that where his father's from, then?
No, so this, I was never quite able to understand it. So Zoran and his father, right, are from Uganda.
Okay.
Right? It's all Indian heritage, but they're from Uganda.
Okay.
His father was a Marxist professor in Uganda. Is really hardcore into
Wasn't his dad born in India, then moved to Uganda, though?
I'm not sure.
And his mother was as well.
Yes, and they've lived in the United States and moved to New York when Zoran turned 7. Okay. Right. So, but he only became a American citizen about 7 years ago. Right.
Okay, so ethnically he's Indian,
yes,
or from the subcontinent or somewhere.
Yes.
Was born and raised for a bit in
Uganda.
And only in the last 7 years has he actually become a full US citizen.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Right.
And he's a Muslim.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
got it.
He's as American as they get, Bo. Sure. I don't see why you're not getting this.
Sure. As American as Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah. So I wanted to. This is his campaigning website, and I went through some of these, and they're just absolutely brilliant. I just particularly, before I begin, want to draw your attention to the bottom one: Trump-proofing New York City. Right. So it's going to become a bit like London with Sadiq Khan. Right. It's going to become New York is just going to become this citadel of wokery and globalism that's just going to fight against, obviously in our case, the British state and London are one and the same. But in this position, he's looking at Washington, he's looking at the Trump administration, and saying, no, I'm going to incubate New York and protect it from all of, well, let's just say, the actual nationally felt, feelings of America at this time in its history.
He's got plans to literally, physically demolish Trump Tower.
Or maybe even seed.
Because the thing is, of course, New York is...
Perhaps he's going to build a wall.
Always firmly Democrat.
Yeah.
But it's also Trump's hometown, right? There are loads of pro-Trump people in New York still.
Oh, yeah.
Plenty.
Yeah.
So,
just not enough to make a difference, not enough to make the numbers. And so I just wanted to focus on a few things from this, which is that as mayor, Zoran will immediately freeze the rent for all stabilised tenants and use every available resource to build the housing New Yorkers need and bring down the rent. Well, again, it's a bit like the England thing. Who are the houses for? Because a lot of people have been fleeing New York in recent years, and so who are all of the new arrivals all of a sudden?
The thing is, with anything like that, so any sort of when you dabble with economics like that, the supply and demand, sort of centralised economy type measures, like price fixing or anything like that, or just trying to fix rents and things, it can never work long term. It's been tried loads and loads of times throughout history to try and fix prices. And
how did it do for Diocletian, Bo, as a fan of ancient history?
It didn't work out very well.
It didn't work for Diocletian.
Did he have rent stabilised apartments that he was just trying to manage at the time?
Diocletian?
Just want to have a portfolio of buy-to-lets, and he was just like letting them all out, and he had to be stabilised.
Whenever actual communists do it, like in Maoist China or something, or in the Soviet Union or Cuba or wherever, it won't work. It's so forced and fake that in the end, markets will just break through anyway. Like you can't.
And if they prevent the markets, you only have to go. Like I've been to Cuba, 3 or 4 times.
Have you?
Yeah, no, I have.
I didn't know that.
No. I went. I deliberately wanted to see the place before he died, and then what happened after he died. And one of the very clear things that you see about the accommodation there, the housing, they have some beautiful apartments that if you'd seen along what's called the Malleson, which is over 1.5 miles of these amazing buildings, all coloured, all built in the right period of history, looking out over this great bay, dilapidated, falling apart, dirty, filthy. And that's what happens if you take the market out of it. Now, I agree that if the market was allowed to flourish, literally no one who lived in that city would be able to afford those within a short period of time, because they'd all be renovated and sold off at £1 million a time, because that's what happens across the whole globe, sadly. But the opposite end of it is lots of families are living in there, but they've got no washing machines, electricity's falling down all the time, building doors, and you can see it. You can see the sheer poverty in the buildings. That's the sort of thing that he'll bring to a 2 million non-stabilised apartments.
You want New York to look like Havana?
Yeah, I mean that's...
i.e. dilapidated and crumbling.
Well, it's very telling, isn't it, that when he was 7, his parents didn't decide to move to Cuba.
No, they didn't.
No, they decided to move to New York City.
Right.
Yeah.
Which shockingly, to the surprise of no one, its prosperity was not built on communism.
No, didn't his daddy get a nice job in a university which was pretty well paid, not in the kind of Cuban communist styles?
I'll get on to that, actually. Where his education was and what he did there. So Zoran will create the Department of Community Safety to prevent violence before it happens by prioritising solutions which have been consistently shown to improve safety. The police will play a critical role, but essentially I'll just skip over the whole thing. We're going to have more mental health programs, presumably more youth centres as well. And it's just one of those things. And increase funding to hate violence prevention programs by 800%.
Prevent violence before it happens. It's like precogs.
Yeah, I was just thinking. It was just the movie that was coming into my mind at the time.
Or the Department of Community Safety puts me in mind of sort of the French Revolution.
Like, what is it? Committee of Public Safety. Public Safety.
Yeah.
What evidence-based non-violence or gun violence prevention programs, or any violence prevention programs that we know that actually has prevented violence?
Ideology.
Yeah.
If you're just ideological enough.
Yeah. If we say it long enough and loud enough, violence hasn't occurred. It's when it's happening right in front of us and someone's smashing their faces in, we don't actually see it. There's no violence there because I ideologically believe that the programs work. I mean, it's a madness.
This is the thing. His entire platform is basically fueled by ideology, right? He's just obviously a man from the same vein of his father. He never put down the crayons and stopped with the socialism.
What does he sound like when
he sounds American?
Oh, he does.
Yeah, his accent is American. But I suppose what I'll do, rather than you get the idea as to what sort of man he is, I'll just talk a little bit about this. So his mother, yes, of New York City's Muslim socialist mayoral candidate, declares he's not an American at all. Now, this is from an interview that she gave about a decade ago, but it really does just show. Says he's a total Desi, completely. We are not Firangs at all. He is very much us. He is not. He's not American at all. And for those of us who are English and American, they've explained here what these words and terms actually mean. So he's basically saying he's totally an outsider. He's born in Uganda, raised between India and America. He's at home in many places. He thinks of himself as a Ugandan and as an Indian. You see, if you were to ask Donald Trump where he feels home is, I imagine he only actually has one answer to that. Whereas this guy is an obvious nomad, right?
A real nowhere man.
Yeah.
Living in his nowhere land.
Yes.
Yeah, that's quite... It's interesting. Do you remember... who was our Tory Prime Minister who was an Indian man?
Rishi Sunak.
Like, his family basically said, yeah, we're Indian people. Yeah, we're Indians, yeah. And proud of it, obviously.
And the establishment went, no, you're British.
Yeah, no, you're
just
not.
as British as we are.
That's right. And I often come to this, okay, where would Zoran be if America declared war on Uganda and or India and he had to put on a uniform? Would he fight? Always ask that question. Let's see what their answer is. And when it's watch their sliminess as they try and evade doing the answer. And that shows where their reality is.
So naturally, this all sounded like sunshine and rainbows to Bernie, and he immediately got Bernie Sanders' endorsement. I got to say, looking at him as well, he looks like he's doing a bit of an impression of Weekend at Bernie's. If you ask me, he's not looking.
I was just saying, he's beginning to look more like Corbyn, or Corbyn's beginning to look more like him each day.
Bernie, you can just retire, mate. Just retire, man.
Yeah, it does look like Corbyn in a centrifuge pulling 9Gs.
So this is from a while ago, as you can see, but it turns out that Zoran was just a major fan of the Indian Communist Party.
Gross.
Just
this is
total...
what kind of mayor
so
New York
gross.
City needs right now. Me.
Yeah.
Where is he in that? Is he?
Oh no, he's just saying that that's his politics. That politics is what New York needs in order to get its act together. Safer streets, cleaner neighborhoods, less crime, all of that.
Where does he see that in India? Safer streets, less crime, apart from the closed-off areas where the MPs live, which have military police on the entry gates. Unless you're in the blocked-off areas of the super-rich that are in Mumbai, that are able to go down to their really expensive holidays and they holiday abroad. So maybe that's the sort of India he wants to bring to New York, enclosed areas blocked by police, loving beautiful gardens and being able to spend £100 on a glass of wine or something by a hotel.
It's interesting though, because New York is famously it is really a bit of a melting pot, isn't it? So the Indian section of New York City's population isn't by any means overwhelming. There'll be lots of other people that don't identify as Indian Americans or just straight up Indians, Desis, whatever it is. Why would they lend him their support? Why would they, if you're an African American living in New York, or you're an Italian American living in New York, isn't he an anathema to you? You'd be like, well, I'm not voting for this guy. He's a partisan for Indians. Yeah, I'm not an Indian. I'm an Italian or Hungarian or whatever it is.
Yeah, sure.
Polak. That's probably racist. Polish.
I think.
I think, why would they want him?
I don't know, and I think what they're doing is New York's always had these kind of sects, the groups, the kind of organisations of the LGBT organisations, the Democrat wealth, for example, of business and those working in New York. Those who identify with the black community, for example. And so they have these coalitions. And I assume that they think that these coalitions all regard him as being the great leader to come and one who can challenge for the presidency That's why I imagine that he's got his 7 years ago that he decided out of the blue that he's going to become an American citizen, so that he can push this through. Although I don't think he can be.
I think
you
have to be born on US soil, don't you?
US soil.
Yeah.
But certainly there'll be a campaign. If he's mayor, he could become governor. The governor's really powerful. And between Chicago and New York, they are the two power bases of who controls effectively the kind of democratic elites and who gets through the major routes up to becoming the challenger for the president.
Especially because, people like him and AOC, even though, she's dropped off a bit, they are the younger end of the Democrat Party.
I think he certainly couldn't ever be president. That's why Arnie could never be president, or why Elon can never be president.
Yeah.
So there's that at least.
Yeah. But you see here as well, this is an old one. Queer liberation means defund the police, right? So back during the whole BLM thing, he was totally for defunding the police. Now, obviously, he's moderated the rhetoric a bit. But this is what he believes, this is what he can say what he wants, but this is, when he felt like the entire political winds were behind him, this is the honest opinion, right?
Everyone that advocated for defund the police, every single one of them, is an enemy.
Yeah.
Is an enemy of civil society, is an enemy of the rule of law.
Well,
straightforwardly.
Well, it's not just the police. He also wants to impede ICE and basically make New York a sanctuary for all the illegals that have arrived there to protect them from the evil orange man, of course, as well.
Actually, there's a very good argument then for Steve Miller and the Congress to actually turn around and say that everyone that we capture, we're just going to give to New York, and you look after yourself. And by the way, it's your funding. It's nothing to do with you're not getting any Fed funding. And that's the weapon that he can do. Adams, who's in power at the moment, complained bitterly about the cost to New York of the mass numbers of immigrants that were coming in there. So he was crying out for more Fed funding. And so there's an element of Fed funding that goes to these. They could just restrict it, change the law. And you have to go through Congress and Senate to do it. But you can isolate the funding from New York and let him have it.
Or alternatively, let him do it. Let him protect them. Let him try and stop ICE, because then you actually have a reason to arrest him as someone who's not upholding the rule of law, right? It's almost Dirty Harry, go ahead and make my day. Do it. Reach for it.
Dare me to send in the National Guard or the Marines,
right?
To stop you from doing it. But short of that, if he does turn it into one of those really bad examples of a sanctuary city, well, okay, great. So New York City turns into sort of an actual hellscape, like Escape from New York style New York City.
Yeah,
that's terrible. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's a dystopia.
Gotham.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be like Gotham. In all of this, obviously, it's obvious that we have every reason to dislike this man. But I am just going to go through some of the reasons why he does seem to have gotten lots and lots of votes and actually become he's not mayor.
No, that's not till November, isn't it?
No, it's not till November. But he has won the Democrat primary. So he is their candidate.
And he will become
he
that.
is
quite likely.
He is.
Right, he's
okay.
like 77% chance to win. Okay. He's going to win.
He beat the big brother Cuomo, didn't he?
He beat Cuomo, yeah.
Disgraced Cuomo.
Yeah. Well, you can see this though. This is just basically an attack from the populist left, right? This is, against what they see as the establishment of the Democrat wing, and so it's really to do with, as I covered earlier, the cost of rent in New York City, the price of food rising, and fortunately, Zoran is very aware of this, and he's going to bring the price of your halal right down.
New York is suffering from a crisis, and it's called halalflation. Today,
it's his Miliband moment.
How much does a plate of halal cost right now from this truck?
$10.
$10. Chicken over rice, lamb over rice, $10.
$10?
Yeah.
When you're a street vendor, you have to pay for the food, the plates. How much do you have to pay for your permit?
Before it was 22K.
17,000.
How much does a license cost if you get it from the city?
I think 400.
So I won't play the whole thing. You get the idea, right? some of the halal vendors have got a lot of red tape in the way in terms of the permits that they're having to use and everything. But is this really it's one thing to say like the cost of food, but halal vendors specifically, that's the angle with that music over the top. It's also something to say, it might not be as apparent there, but his whole campaign did have something of a sort of a postmodern, it was very polished, very TikTok-y, very Zoomer-esque, and because his mother is Indian American, so just Indian, filmmaker, so she's very good at this sort of thing. And you get here, but
I was just wondering about that music. Is it the same music as Palestinian Action?
Well, he
Maybe
would
his
be.
mum did that as well.
He would definitely be on Corbyn's side on this issue, I can assure you. I just wanted to come back to something that you were saying, Bo, about the fact that all the different types of people that are in New York, right? The Italians, the Irish, the Indians, all these different people, and you can see here the Leicesterification of New York. You've got this one guy saying, Zoran is of Indian origin, yet out of sheer Islamophobia, Hindu groups in New York City campaigned hard against him. Now he's going to be mayor, and these groups lost a chance to have a friend in City Hall. The bigotry of Hindus is going to be their undoing in India and abroad.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, sure. That's an accurate reflection of reality. Yeah.
And obviously, as regards to, price freezing of rent, bringing the cost of food down, free childcare throughout the city for all children from, I think it was 6 months to 5 years. You'll just get...
Has it costed it all? How are you going to pay for all this?
Well, he's come up with a very original idea.
He's been with Zia Youssef.
Tax the rich.
And they've been he's been with Zia Youssef, and they've been working out together how they managed to get the costings together. I mean, they're obviously similar types of plans. Very common socialist planning.
So they're going to put on ice for a moment the eating of the rich, so they can tax the rich.
Yep. Yeah. Tax them, and then when they're penniless, then you can eat them.
Then you eat them.
Yep.
Got it. Right.
Yeah.
And they'll be cheap. They'll be cheaper too.
Great plan.
So, but it's one of those enormous contradictions, right? Where it's like, oh well, we're just going to tax the rich, but we're also going to celebrate gleefully as all of the rich leave. It's like, well, why are you celebrating that? There goes your entire plan with how to fund this thing. And this is just a constant loop. We see it in country after country.
That's why socialism always ends in poverty and ultimately famine.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
Because that's hard baked into it, because it doesn't work.
I'm just intrigued about it, because if you get some of the really serious billionaires that live in New York, I mean, they obviously have really important apartment blocks that are very close to where the markets are. The hedge funds work together. The big bond buyers are all very close. But then they have their holiday homes much further up the coast. And so for them, it's a big difficulty to leave unless they actually move the whole of their kind of business model and institutions out of New York, so that they can get some kind of working together conglomerate, maybe up the coast, but it's outside of New York City. They're going to struggle, because their wives will not want to go away from where they can have their lunch dates and their bite. And not a lot of them are all there about their children. Their children go to school anywhere. They can move them out of New York if they wanted to. But it's the wives, the families, and that connectivity that's going to be difficult. Whoever is the cleverest kind of city that is able to say, we can try and help build a new financial centre. I mean, they'll do it. As you're looking in Britain at the moment, Dubai, Saudi Arabia, a lot of businesses moving out of New York and flying there. Now, I'm not saying the people from New York would do that, but it's a similar sort of model. They will lose.
I just find it hard to believe he will get any sort of big mandate in November, because everyone that isn't a Muslim or an Indian Muslim wouldn't want me. Like, there's famously, isn't there, a big Jewish community in New York. In fact, I've heard there's more Jewish people in New York than in Israel. I'm not sure if that's true, but I've heard that.
Pretty much.
It could be. Anyway, they're not going to want this guy, are they?
Yeah.
Who's clearly a pro-Muslim, pro-halal partisan type fella.
Who said...
do they want him?
Yeah, he said if Netanyahu came to New York, I'd arrest him.
Oof.
Yeah. And he also said as well that he wouldn't meet with Modi, because of obviously he's a Muslim and Modi's a Hindu nationalist as well.
So he's explicitly anti-Hindu and Israel.
Yeah.
Explicitly so. It's a bold strategy in New York.
It is.
Yeah, it pays off for the bottom. Yeah.
This is interesting. I'm just reading what Rufo is saying.
Yeah,
I'm
I
glad
was
you
just
put
about
this
to
one
come
up.
to that because I actually think this is worth reading in full. Says, the other interesting angle about the Mamdani win is that the ethnopolitics of New York City have now shifted. The old political machine, white ethnics in leadership with dedicated patronage from the black vote, has lost an enormous amount of influence. The Irish and Italians have mostly assimilated into a generalised white identity. The Jewish vote is fractured as the left has become more solidly anti-Israel, and the black vote is being displaced by new arrivals. The Mamdani coalition rests on this new ethno-political coalition of white leftists, i.e. those who've adopted an ideological identity best understood as a rebellion against whiteness, and as a well-organised Asian, quote-unquote, vote, which tips the scales in favour of Zoran and against the old politics of Andrew Cuomo.
That is quite dangerous.
It's very, very interesting. I wonder how true that will prove to be at the ballot box in November.
Yes.
Far be it from me, genuinely, far be it from me to question Rufo. You may well be exactly right, but a couple of things in there. I would be surprised if it is true that, like the Jewish vote is so fractured and that they're so left that they would be anti-Israel. Are you sure about that? I don't know about that. And that there's a well-organised sort of general Asian vote. Again, I don't know if that is will prove to be true. Like being Asian isn't a monolith.
No, are they Chinese? Are they?
I think what they're trying to do is not say Islamic. There is a big.
Oh, right, okay. That makes a lot more sense. Okay.
There is a change in terms of the demographics of New York, and just
there's more Muslims in New York than there used to be.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
So just like I said that I wanted to go to Cuba and see it just before the end of days with Castro, I think it might be my trip now is to get to New York before it becomes a fully communist Islamo-communist state.
For its full escape from New York.
Yeah. It becomes full escape from New York. The only aspect about that is, I think, Bo, you might be hitting on something here, is whether the different ethnic groups which have all come together on the left to project Democrats, whether the kind of success of that candidate for Congress on Long Island can translate itself now into New York as to mayor, whether that actually will create a division so big that we have one of these almost megalithic revolutions and they vote for a Republican.
Well, that would be sweet, wouldn't it?
That would be just something incredible.
Get Don Jr. in there.
Yeah, I think the polling, watching the polling beforehand will be very interesting.
I will just say, though, that from my point of view, it really just seems like New York has entirely fallen into the same perpetual trap that London has, which is just a demographic question, right?
Yeah.
New York back in 1960, which I pull out only because that's, a few years before the Hart-Celler Act passed, in which they allowed more immigration from, non-white, non-Western countries, I suppose you'd say. The demographics of the white population in New York were about 80%, right? They're now low 30s, right? It's low 30s. They're still majority, but they're majority-minority, right? Yeah. So it's the same with London.
Yeah.
It's the exact same with London. Anyway, I realise we're running a bit low on time with this segment, so I'll just skip through these. I just wanted to draw attention to some of these things, though, as well, because there is some real hysteria about his Muslim identity, right? And on the one hand, I absolutely get it, right? I absolutely get it. But the thing is that when you are really, really hysterical and maximalist about these things, like Marjorie Taylor Greene's doing here, it's like, oh, well, he's going to stick everyone in burqas, right? It's like, well, that's his wife. So,
no.
Like, you've just, it's like, no, if you just spend 5 minutes, right, to just do the actual proper research, because these are easy wins for the left. These are easy wins that you don't need to give them.
Yeah.
You've got more than enough ammunition. You've got more than enough reasons to attack him on the merits of the fact that he's not American, that he's basically a global nomad. Doesn't matter if he's a Muslim or a Hindu or whatever, right? I understand that there's more of a sting to him being a Muslim in the post 9/11 world, right?
Yeah.
I understand that. But, you're going to have to play this smarter, right? Americans are going to have to be smarter about this. And I don't think that this is particularly smart either. Now, I've got some time for Daryl Cooper. I think he makes some good points. But when he says, I couldn't care less who runs New York, you guys have fun, you kind of should care, Daryl. You kind of should, because it is one of the American cities, the great American cities. It's one of the most famous parts of American identity. And if you play the doomer and just abandon it, in the way that some people say London should just be discarded now, just, cauterize it, separate it off. Well, I don't agree.
Just throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Right, you're throwing it out. And the thing is, I don't think that New York is unsalvageable. I don't think it's too far gone. There are practical policies that the Trump administration could pursue that could actually alleviate a lot of the stress and alienation on New York that has led to this point, in the same way that it could also be done for London.
They should run Barron against him in November. Barron Trump.
Caesar.
Cool, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Octavian.
More deep.
Bring him in. I'll just finish with one thing from the Donald, where it says, it's finally happened. The Democrats have crossed the line. Zoran Mamdani, 100% communist lunatic, has just won the Dem primary and is on his way to becoming mayor. We've had radical leftists before, but this is getting a little ridiculous. He looks terrible. His voice is grating. He's not very smart. He's got AOC +3. Dummies all backing him, and even our great Palestinian senator, crying Chuck Schumer, is groveling over him. Yes, this is a big moment in the history of our country. But the thing is, there are people in the Trump administration, like Stephen Miller, who says a commentary about New York City Democrats nominating an anarchist socialist for mayor admits one point, how unchecked migration fundamentally remade the New York electorate.
Yes.
Right? So he understands that the demographics are the destiny. Well, Stephen, you've recognized the political reality. You've recognized why it's got to this point. You're in power. It's not the midterms yet. You've got a full license to do something about this. Start with the illegals, and then there are a whole slew, I'm sure there are entire communities in New York that should simply be deported, right? That are just other Zorans, right? Just nomads. They're not loyal to America, and they're only there for economic purposes until Zoran's socialist policies naturally run it into the ground, and they'll just move over to the next American city.
Yeah.
Where they, to ruin that one as well, right? So just get them out. They're not American. Simple as.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.